take a look at what is currently happening with the demolitions there by NEMA at Java House in Kileleshwa. And of course, we'll have those images up for you on the screen as we continue here with Welly Odendo here on Motivation Monday here on Daybreak. Right, so let's get back into it. We talked a little bit about mindfulness. And I think that's a huge part of self-love, is being mindful of, this is something that I have to do. You know, it's not just, you don't just wake up in the morning and say, oh, it's great, I'm awesome. You know, like this is mindfulness is a big part of it. No, I don't. I've never once woken up and said, I'm the best person on earth, you know? So talk about the importance of mindfulness.
Well, I think mindfulness is everything. We have to see, I say that the soul of a man is divided into 4 quadrants. And these quadrants are what creates self-love or destroys self-love. The first quadrant is fear, the next quadrant is guilt, the other quadrant is thought, and the last quadrant is freedom. Wow. All these quadrants come to play into place because now, if you have healthy self-love, you're able to move from fear or guilt and bring yourself up to freedom in the limited time as much as possible. And you'll see that there's a quadrant there which I've called thought. All these things come together from how you can think. Now, a man by the name of René Descartes, you don't need to know him, but a man by the name, he lived some time ago.
I'm aware.
You're aware of him. Yeah, you might have messed him. You're mindful of him. He says that I think, therefore I am. And he was trying to say that for a person to, the fact that proves that you're a living being is because you're a thinking being. But I want to just use that statement to the benefit of this conversation. Unfortunately, for us, we have not developed the ability to control our thinking. We think compulsively. We don't have an ability because thinking is not taught in our academics. So we have memory, as we call thinking. So the biggest part of our mind that we use is memory. And so memory feeds 2 things, fear and guilt. If I do something wrong, I feel guilty, and the guilt comes from my memory, and so I am trapped in my memory, so much so that I am unable to move forward. And when we talk about mindfulness, that I have to be conscious that, hey, I have to also control and learn how to empty my memory so that I'm not trapped in this vicious cycle of guilt.
And I want to talk about that vicious cycle because I feel like with self-love, that's the thing that can easily go very wrong very fast, and then you just feel like it's happened. So
you're just caged in there. And you have to know that the vicious cycle comes up as a result because there are other quadrants within your soul that you have not exploited. And that is this quadrant, this thing that we call freedom. What's freedom? Is freedom space? No. Freedom is choice. And if you don't think you have the power to choose, then automatically it means you become a victim or a prisoner of your own choices and of your own behavior. So this quadrant that you're calling choice is so powerful that it is what creates the initiating process for starting self-love. And I would urge as many of the people who are listening that no matter what you're going through, you can choose when the morning ends and when the morning begins.
Powerful.
That choice, bringing yourself to that quadrant and saying, I was afraid of this and it has happened. Because the biggest fears we have are only 3. The fear of rejection, the fear of ridicule, and the fear of failure. Now, whether I have already been rejected, I feared being rejected. Now, what choice must I make now that I am rejected? Or I can keep rehearsing. I can keep playing that, or I can come into this quadrant and say, in the midst of all this rejection, I have a choice. I have failed. Yes, I have. But in the midst of all this failure, I have this quadrant that we hardly use called choice. So we need some positive reinforcements of our ability to choose our own happiness, our own peace, our own path. And so the grieving and the mourning ends the day somebody gets into that quadrant of choice. This guilt space, this guilt quadrant is where the pity comes from. When you feel overly guilty, you are looking for a reason to avoid harsh punishment. So you make puppy eyes, you make saggy eyes, you're trying to say, oh, I pray that haitakuwa as bad as they will not punish me harshly. But you live in this guilty quadrant, and so slowly by slowly you begin to feel sorry for yourself, and that's the guilty quadrant.
And a lot of times it's not even about what the world thinks of you, it's about you, what you think of
yourself,
right?
yeah.
So it's tough for people to even start forgiving themselves to even get to the point of choice.
Yeah, because you're in this quadrant of guilt, and so you keep rehearsing it. But there I was warned about these things. Mrs. Kiangi, me and my thick head, me and my black. So what are you doing? The inner voice begins to help you with adjectives. Thick head, black sheep in the family, ubayangwe kwangi. But you can, in all these, there is this other quadrants that can actually make a major change how you think and how you choose. Now, thinking ought to be controlled, just like behavior ought to be controlled. Now, unfortunately for us, we don't control how we think. If your mind right now wants to think of sleep, you will allow it to think of sleep. If your mind right now wants to think of fear, you will allow it to just wander and wander. And this mind that has not been well harnessed by putting in controls. And the best way to put controls into your mind is to first of all know that my mind cannot choose what it should think about. I have the choice of what my mind, it is part of my body. It is not the master of my body. It is a part of me, not the master of me. Unfortunately for us, it's a master, but it's part of your body. Like my leg just can't decide to kick this table off. It wants to kick itself. I have to put it there, my hands. So even my mind, as it controls the physical parts, I ought also to ask it, you too need to be controlled. And how do I control it? By my choice. I choose from today, we are not crying over this, and from today, this is going to be important. That is going to be a priority. Him or her is moving to the third line. They are moving to the fourth line. I will not allow you to obsess over this. If we don't do that, the mind will compulsively push us. Because it's a lazy organ, it will push you towards fear and guilt, And that's why many people feel overwhelmed by the sense of...
You said the mind is a lazy organ.
It's the laziest of all. Once it has, it only picks its interest, danger, and that's why it picks fear and guilt, danger and hunger.
Ooh. Come on.
So
preaching this morning.
So those are the only things. If this thing just makes a move, your mind, as we think right now, we are having a deep conversation. Notice, kumbe it was watching all this time. If a black thing moves out of there, the mind will think snake. We won't start with the belt. We won't start with good things that maybe it's a surprise. We'll just think snake, and it will think the opposite. It's an escape organ. It's lazy. It doesn't want to confront.
I think that's my quote for the day. The mind is a lazy organ.
It's overly glorified by people, but it's a lazy organ. It ought to be trained in order to be diligent. Yep.
Wow. I think as we just finish up here, maybe we can talk about just living intentionally, because I feel like that's what a lot of this is about. Self-love is about being intentional about it, right? One thing I love that you brought up is the choice aspect. And there might be somebody watching this morning, you know, saying, I didn't know I have a choice. I have a choice now. But like maybe we can just finish up on that note.
The first thing I have to tell you is that your identity is a fruit of your choices. And so you have to create time for yourself. Self-love starts from self-time. If you don't have self-time, you will not have love. And whatever is not given time does not appreciate in value. If you give yourself time, you will appreciate in value. If you appreciate in value, people will also treat you as a person of value. If you neglect yourself, look at how glamorous you look. You look marvelous.
Wow.
But if you came here the way at 12 midnight, maybe you were looking for your alarm and showed up here. At that time, you had not given yourself this amount of time. Chances are people will be picking out, hey, you have something here, and you have something here, and you have something. People will be picking out. Why? Because you're not giving yourself time. But when you give yourself time, you come out looking like a doll. Give yourself time. Start, even when your first moments with yourself will be tormenting, You have to train yourself that this is me. I have to audit myself, put myself in a place where I create time for myself to ask myself, when the music fades and everything is not there, who am I? If I feel lonely, tired, defeated, useless, it is just a symbol of telling me this is how much work I need to do. So it starts by giving yourself time and creating time for yourself.
Welly Odendo, thank you so much. I feel like there's so much more here that we could have unpacked, but we're out of time.
Thank you.
Give us your social media handles.
Well, Welly Odendo, WELLYY, and 0723 0722 92 50 31. That's where to find me.
All right.